Greetings, viewers! You may notice I sound a little different. I have finally shelled out some cash on a decent microphone. And I've started using Audacity to edit my recordings. I'm still playing around and learning how to use them, but my sound quality should be better than ever. Another note, I am working on scripts for my video series, and my next major video should be one of them. But now that I am finishing my last semester in college, it may take a couple of months at least. Now with that out of the way, enjoy the video! What we have here is a Christian movie that actually tries very hard. However, somehow that makes it seem worse. I really do not want to do an analysis of the entire film, but I will summarize some key aspects before breaking down the so-called Genesis code. We get introduced to the main characters. We have the hockey star, whose mother is in a persistent vegetative state, and whose grandmother is a spiritual leader of the planet Bajor.
Your pie is strong, my child. Be at peace.
Most of the characters that do not know him think he's just a stereotypical jock with a one-track mind, but he's described as more complicated and cynical by the main female character. But he really isn't cynical. He just comes off as not believing the Bible. But it is a Christian film, so of course no one can have a rational reason for not believing in God. It turns out he stopped going to church because his dad died in a crash in the Arctic, and his mom went into a coma for reasons, I guess. It's never really explained. The witty, confident, double-major, journalist, Christian virgin girl... Oops, not virgin.
Chaste is the word I believe you're stumbling over.
Right. Her brother is a nerdy physicist atheist.
Mark is one of those people that doesn't believe anything is real unless you can put it in a test tube and shake it around.
Whatever.
Yeah, he's one of those silly, rational people. I hear this argument a lot, and it's extremely easy to refute.
So Thunderfoot, the reason I wanted to debate you is because, well, I wanted to bring you kind of out of your science bubble and show you that there is a world outside the scientific theory, the scientific principle, the scientific method, and you're not thinking outside your little bubble.
Yeah, we rational people are so limited and closed-minded by only considering things that are demonstrable. What a waste that we don't consider fantasies that make us feel all warm and tingly. It's so much easier to fill in gaps of our knowledge with whatever we make up that feels good. Also, her father is the Reverend, so we get lots of nice atheist versus Christian family drama. I think that Christians actually think that these are what atheists are like. Either we are socially awkward, close-minded, logical geeks, or we are cynical disbelievers who are mad at God for our horrible, horrible lives. Like most Christian movies, the righteous, pure Christian girl experiences challenges to her beliefs. Bless her little soul.
Seriously, Carrie, you seem like an intelligent girl. You don't really believe in that religious hokey pokey, do you?
Dude, that hokey pokey was out the door like bajillions of years ago, right?
Seriously though, I recommend you watch this movie just for the two scenes with the college advisor. I won't spoil all of it for you, but...
You know, the only reality is the reality that each of us perceives. That's what's great about living now. You know, in this era, there are no absolutes, there are no restraints, there are no restrictions. The only truth is subjective, a truth that each of us believes and that works for each of us as individuals. More important than a college teaching some sort of specific craft, it's more important that it teaches young men and women to serve as leaders in the New World Order. You must accept the reality of the postmodern world. There is no truth. Truth is relative. Reason and rationality are social biases. All lifestyles, religions, and worldviews are equally valid, and the only real sin is that of criticizing someone else's views or moral choices.
How many viewers actually believe that there are people that talk like this? Anyways, none of the dialogue is realistic, none of the characters are relatable, and whoever made this movie should be given, I don't know, herpes? Yeah, they need herpes.
It's a pistachio.
Herpes. Before I get into the code, There are a lot of little tidbits of creationist anti-evolution propaganda, and I want to point out one of them. Just because, well...
This era is often referred to as the Cambrian explosion, reflecting the rapid sudden appearance of most major complex animals around 530 million years ago.
That's not what the Cambrian explosion was. Most animals did not suddenly appear in the Cambrian. There were no vertebrates in the Cambrian. No real biologist would say that. The Cambrian explosion was a period of relatively rapid, and we're still talking millions of years, evolution of multicellular life following a very long period of simple unicellular life. This record corresponds with a vast increase in oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere produced by the hundreds of millions of years of anaerobic life forms. This scene is a whole lot of stupid, and I've edited out most of it for you, but here's the last part.
And back to the issue of order emerging from chaos, Darwin addresses this using the eye as an example, and he says, to suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree.
It's very good.
No! It's not very good, you asshat! No. Just no. I'm not doing Darwin in the eye. Everyone knows this quote mine. Everyone is familiar with the dishonesty, and the only people who believe it are liars and people who don't know how to read. So, fuck you for using it, and fuck anyone who doesn't realize how stupid it is. Now, on to the Genesis code. Basically, what happens is, our Christian heroine gets to thinking about something her weird physics brother said about Einstein's theory of relativity, and relates that to the first chapter of the book of Genesis. She gets her brother to run some calculations, who later runs inside in the middle of the night so excited because he's discovered that science and Genesis agree with each other and you no longer have to choose! Are you excited yet? Here we go!
In the beginning there was nothing. The universe did not exist. No planets or stars, not even empty space, nothing.
Not even time.
Well, let me stop you there. No real physicist actually believes that the universe appeared out of absolutely nothing. The earliest state of the universe, according to the Big Bang Theory, was a singularity containing space, time, and energy. That's the layman explanation, and it's grossly oversimplified, but it's still much more than absolutely nothing.
Everything that ever would be, I mean the material from which everything exists today, the planets and the stars, all living things. Time and space itself was created at that moment.
And this was good news for Bible thumpers like me and Dad, because science was saying that there was a beginning, just like it says in the Bible.
I hear this a lot too. Science once thought that the universe was steady state and therefore existed for an infinite amount of time. But the Bible said that the universe had a beginning, so the scientists should have listened to the Bible. Okay, the Bible and the scientific explanation of the origin of the universe both have the finite existence of the universe in common. So what? Score that alongside what the Bible says regarding medical knowledge, genetics, or everything else. Look, the reason that cosmologists once believed that the universe is steady state was due to the fact that they did not know of the existence of galaxies. Since the observations were restricted to the Milky Way, the expansion of the universe was unknown. Once galaxies were discovered, the concept of a steady state universe began to appear untenable. Once they get to the planetarium, they do include a decent layman description of special relativity. Basically, a person moving at high speed would experience time passing much slower than someone at a stationary reference point. However, their entire premise relating the theory of relativity is grossly unfounded, but I'll save that for the end. Let's go over their entire spiel.
And this brings us back to Genesis and the quandary of 6 days or 16 billion years.
No. The universe is not 16 billion years old. It's 13.8 billion years old. Come on! You can get that off of Google in like 8 seconds.
Dad, if you could summarize for us the first day of Genesis.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and was void. And the darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light."
Close. A more accurate translation states,
"In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
There's an interesting reason for this. As many historians have pointed out, the Bible is a compilation of different stories from different gods and different religions. This is why God appears as human-like later in Genesis, a volcano in Exodus, and as a wind god in the beginning of Genesis. Remember the book of Job, where God appears as a whirlwind? Job is actually the oldest book in the Bible. The word spirit actually is derived from the Latin word for breath.
Are there some points that need to be clarified?
Yeah, 3 really. You need to understand something of Hebrew to understand the book of Genesis. First of all, in the ancient Hebrew language, there is no word for universe.
Really? And why is that? God couldn't be bothered to explain some basic cosmic scale to Moses and instead decided to use the word for earth synonymously with absolutely everything. That's the same justification Christians use to claim that the Bible describes earth as spherical during a time when everyone else thought it was flat. That's actually the reverse of the situation, but that's not my point. The Bible describes the earth as a circle, which according to Christians is because there is no Hebrew word for sphere. Because it was too impossible for God to have said, "Hey, check this out. It's called a sphere. It looks like a circle from every direction."
Secondly, the waters are really representing everything that there was.
No, they are not. You literally made that up. Now, this is only my own assessment, and I will gladly admit it if someone demonstrates that I'm completely off base. But when I put myself in the shoes of an ancient culture with no knowledge of geology, cosmology, or even geospheroidism, I can see how they might have interpreted the nature of the oceans. Think about it. They are looking out into what looks like an infinite stretch of nothingness. This endless ocean seemed to surround everything. It makes sense to conclude that they believed that the oceans were everything and that Earth, or the land, was added to it at some point. Also, didn't you earlier say that Earth meant universe? We are only on the second line of the Bible and you are already contradicting yourself.
And darkness is a symbol for a state of chaos.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you made that up too, because in this context it seems to be the opposite of light. Why do they need to make such grandiose interpretations of some pretty simple words? Because whoever wrote the Bible knew nothing of cosmology, and now you have to make all of these mental backflips to reinterpret what the Bible means to fit with what is scientifically discovered. So even if everything they said was true, there is absolutely no way to gain any scientific insight from the Bible, because these so-called discoveries can only be confirmed after the fact.
Dr. Tolley, day 1 would have started 15.75 billion years ago and ended 7.75 billion years ago. What does science say happened on Earth during this time period?
At the instant of the Big Bang, everything that would ever be, everything that would constitute the quarks, protons, neutrons, electrons, from which everything that now exists, as well as time and space itself, were created. The Earth only existed in the form of stardust.
I see what you're doing here. You're trying to justify the Earth was without form line. You know what the Earth was before it was stardust? It was stars, which it was for 2/3 of the life of the universe. How do we know this? Because Earth is composed mostly of elements that can only be formed within the cores of stars much larger than our sun. And it contains elements that can only form during supernovae. I also love how they seamlessly went from the Earth describing everything to the Earth describing Earth, all within the same 2 lines.
From the initial moment of creation, and as the universe initially expanded, it was a ball of plasma of such incredible heat and density and gravitational forces that no light could have escaped. Initially, there was no light at all, just a swirling opaque mass of pure energy. It was only when this primordial, primal mass had cooled and expanded to a point where the gravitational forces were reduced enough to permit electromagnetic radiation to escape that there would have been light.
So, let there be light is clearly a separate event from the initial creation in both the Bible and science?
Yes.
Again, not accurate. During the earliest phase of the universe, it was not the strength of gravity that kept the universe from emitting light. It was the high energy state that caused all 4 forces to remain coupled together in a grand unifying force. After it cooled sufficiently, the gravitational force separated from the other 3, followed by the strong nuclear force separating from the electroweak. Before that, also separated into the electromagnetic and weak nuclear forces. When we look into the most distant regions of our universe, where light from this period is only now reaching us, we can see an opaque cloud that seems to have been occupying the entire universe about 100,000 to 300,000 years after the Big Bang. This prevents us from seeing any further back because light could not penetrate it at this time. It is absolute hogwash to claim that light simply did not exist at this time, or that this single line in the Bible accurately represents the point when light was able to pass through in the early universe. And they skip the fourth and fifth lines entirely.
And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
Notice that despite the existence of day and night, we have not yet heard of the existence of the sun or the stars.
And during the remainder of that first 8 billion year period, the early stars and galaxies formed.
Wrong again! The first stars formed when the universe was no more than 200 million years old. Good try though, you were only off by a factor of 40.
Dad, day 2.
Day 2, the heavens as we know them were created, and the chaos that would eventually become the earth was separated from the rest of creation.
Wow, they're not even trying to be biblically accurate at this point. We didn't even make it 4 lines into the first page of the Bible, and they've already thrown it out the window. Here's what the Bible actually says about day 2.
And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome, and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day.
This is why I am pretty sure of my interpretation of the biblical meaning of waters. The authors of this ancient nonsense believe that before the creation of the earth, there existed only water. God created earth and then added a dome, a physical solid object to keep some water around the flat earth and the rest outside of it, with the spirit, or breath of God, filling it up and passing over the land and water.
Dr. Tolley, Cosmic Clock Day 2, what happened during this time period?
Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, formed, as did our sun and planet Earth in its earliest carnation.
Wait, how long did they say the first day lasted?
The first of these 6 plots, looking back and based on our time today, would reflect the passage of 8 billion years.
Yeah, so by their own calculations, the galaxy would have formed on the first day, while Earth would have formed on the second day.
Daddy, day 3.
The oceans and the dry land appeared, as well as the first forms of plant life.
And what does the Bible say of day 3?
And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind, bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day.
So we've already established that, according to the Bible, the oceans were already there. They existed before the earth. God scooted the waters aside and plopped the land in the middle. And it describes the earliest forms of plants as being trees and plants with seeds and fruit, when in reality the plants were more similar to pond scum. You can go back further to the earliest multicellular eukaryotes, which were indistinguishable from plants or animals because we share a common ancestor. You can even go further back to where the first protocell got invaded by the ancestor of the mitochondria and formed what would eventually become the first eukaryote single-cell life forms, and the other protocells went on to evolve into the first prokaryote single-celled life forms. All this happened long before there were forbidden apple trees, and plants were not the first life forms to exist on Earth.
Professor Campbell, we're in your arena now. What does science say happened on Earth between 3.75 billion years ago and 1.75 billion years ago?
Well, some 3.8 billion years ago, the Earth cooled, liquid water formed. Almost immediately, first plant and animal life, photosynthetic algae, bacteria appear.
Well, that's nice, because the Bible says nothing about animals on the third day. There was just trees and plants, remember? And apparently by creationist logic, almost immediately equals after the first 3 billion years of life on Earth, followed by the 20 million year Cambrian explosion. But hey, I guess that's not so bad. Those numbers are only 50,000 times and 3,333 times respectively what creationists think the age of the Earth is.
Back to you, Dad. Day 4.
Day 4, the sun, the moon, and the stars appear.
And that makes sense. How? Are they saying that there was a period of over 3 billion years where life formed and day and night existed before there was a sun, moon, or the stars? Didn't they already establish that the galaxy had already been formed without anything except the Earth in it? What the hell? How does the Bible describe it?
And God said, let there be light in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day.
Sounds more like lights were added to the physical dome covering the Earth, kind of like Christmas tree decorations. And maybe I'm being over nitpicky, but can you really describe the moon as a light to rule the night? It creates no light of its own, and it's visible during the day as well as the night, depending on its phase.
Same time period, Professor. 1.75 billion years ago and 750 million years ago.
Well, initially, in the first part of this period, atmosphere on Earth would have been nearly opaque. Then with the rising concentrations of oxygen, the atmosphere would have become translucent. And then the sun, the moon, and the stars would have appeared for the first time from the surface of the Earth.
No. Whether or not the atmosphere contained oxygen has no bearing on it being transparent to visual light. Yes, there was a point when it wasn't, and that was when the first photosynthetic life formed, which could only process low red light. But oxygen-producing visual light processing cyanobacteria evolved 2.7 billion years ago. And are we really supposed to interpret this passage as God describing the view of space from the perspective of under the atmosphere? Why? What purpose would it serve to make it sound like the stars, moon, and sun were created after the Earth, if he did not actually mean that?
Dad, day 5.
Day 5, life is created in the oceans and the first reptiles and birds.
And back to the Bible?
And God said, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky. So God created the sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day.
Yeah, I don't see anything about reptiles, but birds technically are reptiles since they both descended from earlier diapsids. See my video series called How to Evolution for clarification. But this period describes in the film as
750 million to 250 million.
Years ago, but the first true bird fossil found is about 130 million years old. So, would that not have been a day 6 event?
Professor, 750 million to 250 million.
Well, initially, sea life would have been dominant, and then came the Cambrian era. Cambrian explosion about 530 million years ago, when every species of land animal literally appeared at the same time.
I've already gone over the Cambrian explosion a couple of times now, so I'll just respond with, you are literally a f***ing moron.
So instead of a tree of life, it was more like a bush of life.
Touche, Carrie.
And the Bible in day 6?
Day 6, the land animals become dominant, and God created man in his own image.
Yep, you heard it here, folks. Birds came before land animals. I don't have anything else to add to that. What could I? Bible.
And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with the seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Them.
So even the Genesis code couldn't weasel out of the Bible stating that birds existed before land animals. Of course, they spin it as land animals dominated, which I guess means they existed on the fifth day, but they didn't dominate the land until after the birds evolved. But the birds didn't evolve until at least 120 million years after the birds evolved? Yeah, I'm confused too. And what's with the line about creeping things? My guess is the author of this part of the Bible was referring to bugs, but arthropods have existed about as long as chordates, that's us. Both originated during the Cambrian explosion, and both evolved land-dwelling taxa about the same time. So creeping things should be way back in day 5, if 5 is supposed to be the Cambrian era.
250 million years ago into the appearance of Adam.
Well, 250 million years ago, there was a mass extinction. 90% of the life on Earth, followed by a rapid repopulation, mammals, land animals predominating, and...
That was the Permian-Triassic event. Depending on how you define them, there have been between 5 and 20 ELLIs, or extinction-level events.
Like in the Tia Leone Morgan Freeman movie, Deep Impact.
But I didn't think that was a real thing. That's a movie thing, right?
No, that happens.
Anyway, about 35 million years later, around 250 million years ago, the dinosaurs appeared and dominated life on Earth for about 150 million years.
Wait. Didn't you say before that...
About 530 million years ago, when every species of land animal literally appeared at the same time.
But now you admit there were gaps of hundreds of millions of years between large groups of animals? Yeah, you have no idea what you're talking about. The proof of this is essentially Genesis is too accurate for the authors who have written it without divine guidance.
This is a scientifically derived answer to the question with no spin or subjective interpretation.
I think I've already shown that there's a lot of spin and subjective interpretation, and quite a bit of blatant ignorance. What is the key to the Genesis code? It's based off of two concepts: the frequency of the cosmic background radiation and Einstein's theory of relativity. Essentially, as the universe expanded from its initial state, the frequency of the CBR started off very high and the universe was expanding rapidly, so time in the universe would have been passing much faster than God's perspective, which is supposed to be the entire universe.
God's frame of reference when telling the story has to be somewhere not affected by local distortions.
Like speed or gravity? Yes, and that somewhere has to be the universe itself, the total universe, the cosmos, not some isolated locality within it.
So while Earth and the rest of the universe experiences stretches of billions or hundreds of millions of years, God experiences time in a single day. which he bases off the frequency of the CBR, which is slowing, and that is why the days get shorter. I know it's confusing and contradictory, but try to follow it. They are right that the CBR is getting colder and farther away, and will eventually be unobservable as it passes behind the cosmic horizon. But the problem is the Bible describes a morning and evening of each day. Why would somebody have used a unit of time such as a day from the perspective described? There was no morning, there was no evening, because there was no planet and sun. Even during the days when there was a sun, there were many other stars and planets existing, and none that would be experiencing a night-day period such for God to base his reference. I know, they could just say he based his time on the cosmic clock of the CBR and then converted it to days for Moses' benefit. The other problem with this concept is their interpretation of the theory of relativity. I know why they use the theory of relativity. It's a strange and mysterious topic that seems to break all the laws of physics. Well, get ready. I'm going to show you how it works. The mind-blowingly amazing principle of the theory of special relativity time dilation is... Yep, that's it. Yes, I left out the proof, but the equation really is not that complicated. I did this in a lower division, sophomore level physics class. What this is saying is the time experienced by a moving point is equal to the time experienced by a stationary reference point divided by the square root of 1 minus the square of the moving point's velocity divided by the square of the speed of light. Now, did you catch the problem? Time experienced by a moving point and time experienced by the stationary reference point? Often in physics, the Earth is treated as a reference point where time is constant, but since the Earth is a rotating sphere, that's not completely accurate. Indeed, people standing on the equator, rotating at over 1,000 miles per hour, experience time at a slower rate than those closer to the poles, which don't move at all. But it is small enough to only create imperceptible errors. Unfortunately, when your reference point is literally everything, the equation breaks down completely.
And that somewhere has to be the universe itself, the total universe, the cosmos, not some isolated locality within it.
I would have loved to see their math, but they do not show any. They do show some generic graphs and equations, including the one I just explained. So let's see if we can use a couple of their numbers and see what the results imply. We plug in 8 billion years as the time experienced by the moving point, 1 day as the time experienced by the stationary point, and the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. So we solve for u, the velocity of the point moving in miles per second. The value we get is a value that is so close to the speed of light that my graphing calculator rounds it to exactly 186,000 miles per second, which is supposed to be the rate of the expansion of the universe during the first 8 billion years of its existence. Now, I've actually worked backwards from what the characters supposedly did. They started off with T sub naught, that's the passage of time experienced by the stationary God, as 1 day, plugged in this speed, and solved for the time experienced by the rest of the universe during the first day. Then they used smaller and smaller rates of expansion for the other 5 days. But the speed makes no sense. The rate of expansion cannot be measured relativistically because the universe is not an object traveling through space. It is space itself expanding. Furthermore, the expansion rate was initially faster than the speed of light, which is another reason this equation fails, because when you put in speeds greater than the speed of light, you get negative time values. What this is literally describing is God as a stationary point in space and the universe as a whole traveling through space away from him at almost the speed of light. So, no, there is no Genesis code. You can't use science to support anything in the Bible. If you could, you would have read more than 3 lines of it before completely disregarding it.
Billions of years for the first single-celled animal forms to evolve, and that is purely by chance. I believe in microevolution, evolution within the species. I don't believe in macroevolution, one species becoming another. Every species of land animal literally appeared at the same time.
This blows!